Hi, and welcome to Modern Day Mystic with your host, moi, Janine Barzali. This is my first episode, and I figured that this year was going to be a good year to put out some content and just ask some common questions that I get a lot of. I am and have been working in the field as a medium and an intuitive for over 26 years, and so at this point in time, there's a lot of things that I can share now that I couldn't share when I first began. So I'm going to start off with the most commonly asked question I get. What is it that you do? This is actually a really important and good question that anyone who is going to get a reading, or get into the realm of intuition, esoteric, you should ask, because the reality is that we're all a little different, and that's a good thing. This is not I'm not having this channel about being like what's good, what's bad. It's just about recognizing that we all are a little different. So it's really great to ask, like, what is it that you do? If someone were to ask, I normally say that I'm an intuitive and I'm a medium. And what that means is the mediumship piece is I can give you messages of love from your loved ones who have crossed over. And the intuitive piece is I'm able to kind of see the energy that's around you, read kind of like from an outside perspective what's going on in your life, what might need to be healed from the past to move forward, what your energy is giving off versus what you actually desire to give off. And I am not a fortune teller. I actually don't like the word psychic. I'll get into that as well. But I am not somebody who believes or even wants to take away your power in your ability to determine your own future and path, which means that I'm not going to give you like answers to your questions. I can give you insight. And those are two very different things. Now, having said that, is if you want answers, there are people who do that, and that's great. Like I said, I'm not here to talk about right and wrong, good and bad, just here to say, hey, there's so much in this field. Let's talk about it and let's be honest about it. So going back to, well, what does that even mean? What's that medium, intuitive, loved ones? What? Right? So I have the ability to I actually kind of feel more like an interpreter. I don't channel. I'm never out of my body, or like I don't do some sort of weird like, oh, I do pray before every single session that I have. And what my prayer is, it's pretty simple. It's that your best and highest good come through, that the highest of the high, the most loving of loving creators of all creators, encompass us and circle us with peace, with love and protection. That's kind of my simplicity of the way I work. And then I read what is around you. And in my experience, our loved ones are always they're with you. They're not with me. I don't conjure anybody up. I don't do anything. I'm just reading the energy that's there, the love that's there. And so, I always say that there's one message, honestly, if you want to know, save yourself some money. If you want to know what the message from your loved one is, it's I love you. Even if your relationship here on earth isn't the best, it is quite simple and quite profound. But also, I want you to think about it in a wider sense. If you have an opportunity to talk to somebody that you're connected to, and that you're going to go through the lengths, right, to connect with them, are you going to talk about something that's kind of trivial, that's fleeting? Or are you going to say, oh my God, I love you? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry I did this to hurt you. I love you. So that I always say is just like, if I'm reading you, that's like the main message. All the other things that come through, like I said, I call myself more of an interpreter versus somebody who may channel, or somebody who, you know, like literally tries to get a particular person in. It's not what I do. It's more of, and the best way I could just describe it is, um, again, seeing the love that's around you and interpreting that energy. Because once we're out of this body, right, we don't have, like, you can't be sick without a body. You can't have mental illness without a brain. You can't, your viewpoint, right, is a little bit different. So to me, it's like taking this one vibration or this one language and making it, or filtering it, or translating it into something that makes sense. And so I don't see like a ghost. I don't see like the human form, and that's because, again, my experience is like they're not in a human form. They're not a ghost. That's just, that would be a projection of something. Um, Sometimes if I were to really be like technical, if you will, sometimes I see colors. I feel feelings. Um, there is sometimes where I actually do hear, like, certain words or a name, but that's honestly not my forte. I know some other people who do that kind of work. So what would be typical in a reading, especially when we talk about loved ones who crossed over, is, I pretty much get a sense of a relationship. I normally start with like, oh, is that, your mom's crossed over, correct? Or your brother's crossed over, or, and I normally get kind of like 2 or 3 different personalities. And I think that's really something that is interesting. And it's because there's always like kind of the information that says, here's what I was like on Earth. Here's kind of my perspective now. And sometimes I even get like a larger perspective even above that. But it's really important to understand, right? Just like, we have different relationships with different people here on Earth, right? The way my kids know me is very different than the way my husband knows me, which is very different than the way my sister knows me, which is very different than the way my mom knows me. And while I'm all the same person, their experience with me might be just a little bit different depending on relationship. And so a lot of times when I am doing a reading, I get to access more than one perspective of that soul. And a lot of times, depending on, the reason for the reading, my readings I tend to do more things on, a healing aspect. And what I mean by that is that the connection really isn't, to answer, particular questions, but to have a broader base understanding of this love that connects us. And in that presence of that love, I find it to be healing. And so that would be what is it that you do? How a typical reading would go in the what is it that you do is, you kind of, as the person who is receiving the reading, you don't do much other than maybe say yes or no. A lot of times I don't even look at you, or if it's over the phone. I actually like phone readings the best because there is no like visual, but I'll talk about that another time too. But a lot of times I don't even look at you because I don't want to read your personal, like mannerisms. I I always say I kind of look to the side. I kind of look up and to the side. And I've gotten so many times like, is there a ghost up there? Is there? And it's like, no, I'm literally just not looking at you. You know, it's like the whole, absolutely the opposite of like make eye contact with somebody. You know, it's, um, it's my way of being able to see, like, and I almost really do feel like it's like just changing perspective, see in a different perspective. um and you know, again, I'm not here to um make anyone believe or not believe or prove anything. It's just sharing. I share information. And I always want to make sure that every single person who, you know, either comes to me as a client or who's a friend or who's anyone, you know, always feels like they have the agency and that they're in full control of what their interpretation is themselves of their, you know, um, path, and that the information isn't me trying to like force anything, but that I'm just sharing what I see. And then you can do with that what you want. So that is kind of the mediumship part. Then there's the intuitive part. Like I told you, I said I don't really, I don't call myself a psychic. I don't want to be a psychic. I think that's really it. Even if I could, I don't think I want it. And why does that word psychic bother me? I'm not really sure, other than I just really, in a general sense, don't like anybody who thinks that they know what they're talking about. I don't know how else to say it. I think my experience has been so vast that the one thing I can tell you for sure is that none of us know shit. And so for me to say like, or to even like want to have the authority to say that I know it's going to happen for sure, or that, again, to be like psychic, I feel just isn't truth. So, so that's not why I use it. Now, I have friends who call themselves psychics, and I love them, and I think what they do is it. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to make sure that you understand that this is not me judging somebody else who may use this word because it works for them. It's just because it doesn't work for me doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. Does that make sense? So I say I'm an intuitive, that I have perspective, that I can access different, you know, outside perspective. And I always kind of see things in like a different vibration is the best way I can put it, right? I think that's the best way I could put it. So it's like there's the energy that's just like around you. Then, you know, there's the energies of like loved ones, and they're not all seeing or all knowing. Just because you pass away doesn't mean like you all of a sudden become like, you know, you have all the information or the answers. Just want to make sure that that's true. If you, you know, are asking advice from your like grandmother who's passed away, or your, or whomever, just know that it's their advice. It's not, you know, this divine, you know, God who's saying this is the truth. You know, it's just, it's relationship. Then I do, okay, so like, so there's that one around you. There's the realm of where I'm going to just say our loved ones. And then there tends to be what I actually do look at it as like larger, or I don't want to use the word higher or lower. I'm not really sure, but it's a spiritual space. It's like this unbelievable loving knowing in which there isn't really, there's not actually judgment. It's about experience. It's about kind of actually like taking away all the lies that we kind of tell ourselves or that we're told, or it's kind of like taking all of that away, and there's this like true essence that comes through. And sometimes I'll get kind of information or perspective from there, which is really neat. And again, I just share what comes through with exactly like I'm doing it right now. That's kind of how I see it. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm sharing my experience with you. And whether it be you take that and you kind of like feel what feels right to you, or decipher what anything means for you, or sometimes we'll have a conversation, I'll have a conversation with a client or something, and more things will be like, oh, that kind of, it's like almost like our joint effort of what I really think the purpose of is finding our true essence of love in our most authentic way, to be able to just be here as both creation and creator, and to know that we're a part of something, not in charge of something, to know that we both are affected by others and we affect others. um, so like there's kind of a deep spirituality in my viewpoint. um, so that's kind of what an intuitive reading will, you know, be. And that's mainly how I work. Every now and again, I will do things like tarot, or I actually did some tea leaf readings recently, and that was really fun. But those to me are more tools. It's not something that I would say like is my thing. It's fun, and because I'm intuitive and because I like to have, different experiences, or especially if I'm going to read myself, I'll use a tool. But if someone was like, I really like tarot cards, I'm a tarot card reader and I want a tarot card reading, um, there's like so many people that I know who do that, and I would recommend you to go to them and not me. You know, except for I think I want to try out tea leaf readings more, just because I'm having it's like it's again more that for me is like more on like a fun realm of things. Anyway, that's just a side tangent. So, does that confuse you? Does that make sense to you? I'm not sure of what is it that you do. The other piece is like what would be in a reading, or what should you expect in a reading. And I think I might make a whole nother YouTube about that. But the short of it is, you're not really expected to do anything other than show up. You don't have to bring anything. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to click your heels 3 times. I don't know. Don't have to bring anything with you. All you need to do is show up, and be able to say yeses and nos. Because, basically for me, the way I work is, if you can confirm something for me, if I know like, all right, that's a confirmation, it just lets me go deeper quicker. It's part of my personality of needing confirmation or needing affirmation. And then I also am human and I could totally be wrong. So I'm not opposed to, if I say something and it's wrong, it's wrong. You say no, Having said that, if you've had readings by me, you'll know I say this. Sometimes I argue with your no. And 9 times out of 10, when I'm arguing with your no, when I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but I still see it, but I still see it, but I still see it, but I still see it. 9 times out of 10, the information is correct. It's just not being placed in the correct space. Sometimes it's because I'm not fully interpreting it correctly. Sometimes it's because the person sitting with me actually doesn't know. And they go back home and they talk to, their mother, their friend, their sisters, whatever. And they're like, oh my God, that was, that's Uncle Joe who came through. That's completely who Uncle Joe is. And then I get, phone call. One of the most profound experiences with that was I had a reading with somebody who I was wrong with everything. Like it was like, it's so profound to me because like, I hate to say it, but I'm not normally wrong, with everything. And like, I was like, you have a sister who's crossed over? She's like, no. I'm like, you have a mom who's crossed over? No. You have an aunt who's crossed over? No. And I mean, if you have a sister who's crossed over, you pretty much know you have a sister who's crossed over, or if you have an, it's like some things, we can have like, there could be misinformation in there, but like this was a reading where everything was just a no. And it was a few months after this reading, because it happened to be in a group setting, that this woman booked a private session with me. And I was like, how the hell did she book a private session with me? Like, I was completely wrong. And I was freaking out a little bit. But she sat in my office and she's like, I'm here because every single thing you said was correct. And there's no way you could have known because I didn't know. And it like turned out that she did have a sister who passed. Her mom had had a child before she was born who had passed, and they never talked about it. And there was a lot of secrecy in the family, so which is where she just didn't know certain pieces of information. And so everything that I had come through, was correct. And it was one of those, experiences that I had. I mean, and we're going back 15 years or so. And it's still, there's nothing worse than to be a reader and just be completely wrong. Like, just like, and in a group setting, like, I'm like, just a personal, like, from my viewpoint, you're like, shit, I don't know, but but the way I read and the way I am is, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not gonna try to be something I'm not. And so what comes through, is what comes through. And so there's like almost something for myself where it's like, and that's why I always say, I'm just going to share, because I can't determine this. And I actually don't want that responsibility. So this was like one of those, aspects where, I was, in that moment I was wrong. A couple months later, she had come in and she's like, holy shit, like, you were right. And then I was even like, okay, holy shit, that's crazy. All right, let's see what else comes through. So there are times, like I said, where you'll say no, and I will be like, but I still, I've kind of learned to say, let's write that down, but I still see it. It could probably still be something, so let's like pay attention to it. Other things, people will say no to me and I'll be like, throw that out. I'm not attached to it either. It came through. We don't need it. So that's kind of how a reading goes. But as the person who's receiving the reading from me, you're really, you get to just sit there, and I do all the talking, just kind of like I'm doing all the talking right now. I have a list of other questions that I'm going to answer, but if you're watching this and you have a question that you always wanted to ask, put it down in the comments, and hopefully I'll get to doing a small video. I don't want to make them too long. This is already 22 minutes. So with that is the answer to what is it that you do? That's the best way I can explain it today. Have a good one. Know that you're magical, and know that you can be a skeptic, magical, a believer, and a non-believer all in one. It's okay. We're just figuring this out together. The biggest thing is that we just kind of get our hands on our hearts and we say, you know what? We want goodness and love in this world, and we want to be that too. All right. Love ya. Bye.